Rejection. What a fascinating and cruel little experience. It is the whisper of finality, the slamming of a door you thought was open forever. It is the silence that lingers long after a goodbye. It is the slow, creeping realization that someone has made the conscious choice to remove you from their world, and yet, here you are. Months later, a message appears, a call, a sudden unexpected check-in. The same person who discarded you, who assured you they wanted nothing to do with you, has returned. Why? Why do almost all avoidants return after rejecting you? Is it regret? A realization of love? A cosmic force pulling them back? Ah, my dear listener, if only it were that simple. Today, we shall unravel this mystery. We will step inside the labyrinth of the avoidant mind, into the corridors where fear and longing wage war. We will expose the strange, paradoxical reason why those who run always find their way back. Let us begin. When an avoidant ends a relationship, when they push you away, cut ties, reject your presence, it appears absolute. It feels like an execution, swift and merciless. They do not waver. They do not beg you to stay. There are no tearful embraces, no moments of doubt. They leave, and you are left wondering how someone who once held you so close could walk away without so much as a second glance. You tell yourself it is over, that you must move on, that they will never return. Ah, but you would be wrong, because for the avoidant, rejection is rarely the end of the story. It is simply a chapter in a much longer book, one they will return to when the silence becomes unbearable. To understand why avoidants come back, you must first understand why rejection is so intoxicating. There is a study, conducted by Helen Fisher, a renowned biological anthropologist, that found something remarkable about the way the human brain responds to romantic rejection. She placed individuals who had recently been rejected into an fMRI scanner and observed their brain activity as they viewed images of their former lovers. What she found was astonishing. The same regions of the brain that are activated in drug addicts experiencing withdrawal lit up like a Christmas tree. Yes, you heard me correctly. Being rejected by someone you love triggers the same neurological response as a cocaine addict craving their next fix. And this, my dear listener, is where things become very interesting. Because while you, the rejected one, feel the full force of this addiction immediately, desperate for another hit of their attention, the avoidant does not. Not yet. Now we must venture into the avoidance world. To understand their return, we must first understand their departure. The avoidant operates on a subconscious fear, the fear of being consumed by intimacy. In the early days of a relationship, they experience a sense of euphoria, drawn to your warmth, your affection, the intoxicating closeness of connection. But then, something shifts. Your presence, once a comfort, becomes a threat. Your love, once welcomed, becomes overwhelming. And so they push you away. They tell themselves they do not need you, that they never truly loved you, that they are better off alone, and so they leave. But here is where the irony unfolds. Avoidants do not actually want to be alone. They simply want the idea of freedom, the illusion of independence. And so, after they have spent weeks, perhaps months, basking in the glow of their reclaimed solitude, something unexpected happens. The craving sets in. At first, it is a whisper, a fleeting thought, a passing memory. Then it grows. They begin to feel the pull of what was, the comfort of your presence, the ease of your understanding. They remember the security you provided, the stability they took for granted, and suddenly the world feels a little colder. Suddenly you are no longer the problem. Suddenly they are, and so they return. Not because they have changed, not because they have healed, but because the silence has become too much to bear. Here, my dear listener, is the cruelest paradox of them all. An avoidant wants love. They crave connection, But the moment they have it, they panic. They mistake intimacy for entrapment. They mistake closeness for suffocation. And so, they leave. And yet the moment they are truly alone, the emptiness consumes them. They realize that in their desperate attempt to escape intimacy, they have only imprisoned themselves in isolation. And so, they return. Not because they have suddenly realized your worth, but because they need to break their own solitude. You, my dear listener, become their cure, their familiar comfort, their safe harbor in a storm they created themselves. And in that moment, they will swear to you that they have changed, that they see things differently now, that they are ready. But are they? That is the question we must now confront. Here we arrive at the most painful truth of all. Most avoidants do not return to love you. They return to relieve themselves. They return to momentarily silence the loneliness they swore they wanted. But change, real fundamental change, that is something else entirely. For an avoidant to truly change, they must do something they have spent their entire lives avoiding. They must face themselves. They must confront the fear that has governed them. They must sit with their discomfort instead of running from it. And most importantly, they must recognize that love is not a prison. It is a choice to stay, a choice to open, a choice to let someone in, despite the fear. But most avoidants are not ready for that choice. They will return, yes, but they will return as they were. And so, my dear listener, the real question is not if they will come back. The real question is, will you let them? And now we reach the end. Perhaps, dear listener, you have spent weeks, months, even years waiting for an avoidant to return. You have envisioned this moment, the message, the call, the reunion. But I ask you this, what if their return is not the victory you think it is? What if their absence was the blessing? What if the real triumph is not in getting them back, but in realizing you never needed them to begin with? Because here, in this moment, you have a choice to repeat the cycle, or a choice to break free. And if you choose the latter, my dear listener, that is when something extraordinary happens. The moment you stop chasing them, the moment you step off the wheel, the moment you find peace without them, that is the moment they will crave you most, because nothing unsettles an avoidant more than the one thing they never expected, a love that no longer waits for them to return.
If you believe this video might help someone dear to you, share it with them. A small gesture on your part could mean the world to a friend in need.